Sego, everybody. Welcome back to Onondaga Let's Talk Water. I'm your host, Makasa Looking Horse. Sego, everybody. or no. Mukashin gets Ginikahaga Nugohanjode, Wakatahuni, Six Nations, Nita Wageno. I'm Mohawk and Lakota from Six Nations. I'm a student at McMaster University, and I'm the youth coordinator for the Onondaga Waters Life Project that has been going on in Six Nations, looking at our water for the last 3 years, and that this show is a part of it. So thank you for tuning in, and I'm so grateful for all of our audience and all of our guests who are joining us today. I'm so excited to chat with them. So today's episode is about food security, and we know food is our connector, whether it's through language, the land, or with each other. So today we will talk about the connections that exist with food. We are joined today by three amazing Haudenosaunee women from Six Nations, like Adrianne, Xavier, Kitty Lickers, Tawyna, Brant, and we're also going to hear a pre-recorded conversation with Bertha, Skye, who is my grandmother, and she's an amazing elder. But first, we're going to listen to some music, and here's a Echo My Soul by Demand Artists. Here's the video.
Because a town is small doesn't mean we have to be. 'Cause we can rise or we can fall. I guess it all depends on me. I will stand against all odds. Tell me what you wanna see. It's a long road, but we'll get
everything you hear. Listen, come with me and I will make it clear.
I know there's something big happening. We wanna rise up from the hole we're standing in. It's time to get out and find strength in my native pride. I will represent my land and make it right. Live in a small place with big dreams. I will take any chance that you give me. So let me think deep. Don't wanna be forgotten. Wanna be a light while the devil plotting. I wanna see the truth. I'm just being honest. I wanna be the best, but I gotta keep it modest. I wanna see my culture succeed. I wanna feed that love inside me. Work endlessly to find the energy and give everything to be free.
It's a long road, but we'll get there.
Work endlessly to find the energy and give everything to be free.
To the lost souls, find the strength in the love we have to give. Somewhere, somewhere, there's so much hope. Somewhere, somewhere, we will find our road. Just lead the way. Let's make this oath. Uplift the brave hearts. Echo my soul. You want the world to know. Echo my soul. You want the world to know. Let's make this oath. Uplift the brave hearts. You can echo my soul. You can echo my soul. You can echo my soul. You can echo my soul.
Hi, thank you for watching our video. That's our intro video. And now I'll be introducing my grandmother, Bertha Skye, who is an award-winning chef and won many medals at the 1992 World Culinary Olympics. Here's her pre-recording. You can go. Hi, everybody. We have a special guest today. Her name is Bertha Skye, and she's also my grandmother, and she has had a huge part into raising me, and that's how I grew up to be a strong woman, because I was raised by strong women, just like my grandma. And she is a wonderful woman, and she's changed so many people's lives and helped so many students at McMaster, Sheridan, and Mohawk, because she's been in residence there for a long time. And she's just been an amazing woman in a community and teaching a lot of people her food and revitalizing the food, and a lot of stories, and she's helped a lot of students. So thank you, Grandma, for all of the work that you've done. And we're so happy to have you. And a few things that she has, a few awards that she has won, I want to say, was that she was actually at the World Culinary Olympics in Germany, where her team won 11 medals, and she has also won numerous other awards, like the McMaster or the Mohawk Fellowship, the Mohawk Distinguished Fellowship Award, and also the Hamilton Gallery of Distinction. So she has won numerous awards like those, and completed a lot of things throughout her lifetime. And I'm so happy to have her here with us. Hi, Grandma.
Hi.
Do you want to say a few things about yourself?
Oh, yes. It's nice to be here. And I think your work is amazing. And when it comes to the water, that is so important. And the topic today is food. And I'd like to tell us a little bit about myself, where I come from. I was born in northern Saskatchewan to Cree parents. There was 11 in our family. I had 4 brothers and 7 sisters.
Wow.
And and we were all born. My mother and father got married in 1917. That was when the other virus had hit the world. They had the virus all over the world, which was the Spanish flu. And they used to talk about that, how severe it was. And that memory is still with me, whether it's blood memory or, but it seems like I know what people would be going through. And I had very smart parents. In the 30s, when I was born in 1932, there was a world war happening, a Second World War. So there was a lot of hardships. People were going through many, many difficult times with a shortage of food. Things were rationed. And if you had a large family, you'd run out of food, whether it was flour or sugar, tea, or whatever you were going to buy it, you couldn't buy it. So my mother and father gave us orders, all the kids. We'd always eat together at one meal. And if we're going to survive the next year, we're going to have to plant a big garden. And so they plant potatoes, cabbage, turnips, carrots, and onions. These they could keep through the winter. And
So food was
they
so food was
beg your
very
pardon?
much food was very much a part of survival.
Oh
for you?
yes, very much. Oh yes. And so when they plant a big garden, it was up to the children to pull weeds. So we knew how to do that, and we knew how to pick berries and collect blueberries, Saskatoons, cranberries, strawberries, raspberries, and my mother would can them, make jam or for all the family, and the children would do the picking. And there was many berries, not like today. And so that was very useful. And we helped a lot of people when there was people were hungry. My mother and father would give them whatever they had, whether potatoes or onions, or we shared food. And growing up, we did a lot of work. We had to do a lot of work. And when I'd go out there to weed, I would say, one day when I grow up, I wished for three things. One day when I grow up, I want to see the world. I want to see what's out there, because we lived in an area where nobody lived. and I said, one day when I grow up, I want to see Niagara Falls, and I want to marry a man that's not a farmer, because we had to do a lot of farm work. And those kept with me, those three things. So when the war was over, I went to work. They turned the armories in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, where they trained 500 soldiers, and they turned it to a residential school. They had 500 children, and they needed cooks. I applied for a job when I was 17, and I got it. So that's when my career started. I had a good cook, a good teacher. He was a chef in the army, so he was a good cook. And from there, I started traveling, cooking in residential schools. I cooked altogether in 4 different schools. And And the last school was Moose Factory, Ontario, where my husband was teaching school. And that was 1956. We started
Wow.
dating. 57, we got married. I was 27 and he was 29.
That's a good age.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And and he, I said, I've got to go home and tell my parents that we're going to get married. So I went home and I told my mother and father. My dad wouldn't answer me. He didn't talk to me. Just had his head down. And my mother, the next day, she said, we don't want you to marry him. I said, why? Well, we don't know what kind of a guy he is. He said, what if he should abuse you? And we would have no money to send for you. So I wrote and told my husband, they don't want me to marry you. So I got a letter from him. He said, meet me in Prince Albert and next Friday. So he was coming out there and I said, you're going to have to ask my dad if you can marry me. He said, we're not children. He said, we're adults. We're going to the city and we're going to get married. So we went to the city and we got married, and that's how it all started. But then they loved him and I loved him, and he was good to me. And we accomplished so much together. We had 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys. And he respected my way of living, the Cree culture, and I respected his, the Iroquois culture. And he was very strong, and I guess I was strong too in my beliefs and what we did for medicine and food. So he brought me back to Six Nation, and I thought my first experience, oh boy, they were so close to the towns. There was stores all over, and oh my gosh, it was so much more modern than where I come from. And I thought, my kids are not going to go without what I went without, which was a big mistake. You know, eating, we weren't allowed to drink pop or Pepsi or Coke. We drank water, which was really good. We never drank Pepsi or Coke. And we raised our children, and we had a very good life together. And he was a very traditional person. He was a good husband that never abused me and my children. In fact, he's still looking after us. You know, he provided a home for me before he died, and all the things that I have in the home.
Yeah,
And
my grandpa, he was amazing, and he knew so much, and he was a very respected elder in the community. And his name was Hubert Skye, and he's won a Juno Award, I think. He's won numerous awards just like my grandma, and he's really a legend in the community, and he's helped revitalize the language and the ceremonies, and he was really a legend in the community, and he's really respected in the community. And so yeah, it's really interesting, and it's really amazing story how you guys' relationship came together. And you also fed your family mixed foods of Haudenosaunee and Cree, and that is relationship building with foods, and nations coming together and harmonizing together within the relationships, within foods. And it's really beautiful to see that. And I can even say that with my own experience with being half Lakota and half Mohawk. So, how did you get from cooking into the residential schools to to going to the Culinary Olympics in Germany and winning 11 awards?
Well, I was chosen as the pastry cook, and I could make tarts and pies and cookies and anything to do with pastry. And the other guys all had, but we all had to submit different recipes. And I introduced to the world Three Sisters soup, which was Iroquois. And when I introduced that to the world, and it just, that soup was made all over the world. They took that recipe down, and Three Sisters soup, and it is so good for people. Iroquois food is very healthy, which is a corn soup where they lie it. There's a story I'm going to tell. When my husband first brought me, he said that my mother's making a welcome home dinner for you. Oh, no, that's nice. And she was cooking early in the morning. She was stirring something in a pot. And I was very curious what she was cooking. And after a while, I went and I looked in a pot. Here she had, oh, what are you making? And she said, corn soup. And, and in that soup, there was ashes in there. Oh my gosh, they eat ashes here. That's what I said. They eat
Oh my
ashes.
gosh.
And yeah, but that's the process that is used to take the hull off the corn, and which is such a good way to do food because it takes all the sugar out of the corn, and it's so healthy for people that have diabetes. And that's the Iroquois, technology that they had, a healthy lifestyle. And then in another pot, she had, oh, this is for cornbread. Oh, that was new to me too. I never ate cornbread before. And okay, she was making that now. She was grinding the corn and she was patting it, and she made little cakes. Then she puts it in boiling water and was boiling, and it floats up in the water. And okay, this is ready for dinner. And the soup was almost ready. And of course, she had to wash it 4 times before she put it in with the meat. And I didn't like it at first, because it was different. I wasn't used to the taste, but it was really good. I really love corn soup and cornbread. And we had to share a lot. And I cooked my Cree food. Like I like deer meat, moose meat, and caribou, whatever we could buy sometime, or buffalo. And and then some people would say, "Oh, I don't like the taste of that. There's a terrible taste." I said, "You know what those animals eat? They eat all the medicines that are out there in the bush, and those are medicines that are medicine in our body." And you know, people don't understand that. And even my children, they say, oh, I can't eat rabbit. You're cooking rabbit, especially my daughter Pam. I can't eat rabbit. I mean, like it's like you're eating Bugs Bunny. You know,
Yeah, it's
I don't want to eat Bugs Bunny. Well, you know what I told her? Well, I said, you didn't blink an eye when you ate Porky Pig this morning, did you? That's like when they eat bacon, you know,
yeah,
you were eating Porky Pig too. And,
exactly. Like you just
you
pick
know,
and choose. And everything that you're talking about is a lot of work, like to make corn soup and light the corn and ashes. Like that is a lot of work. And picking the
it
corn.
takes hours.
Yeah, and nowadays it can be easier to go to the grocery store and go grab something and bring it home, and everything's already prepared and packaged for you. And it's super cheap to go to McDonald's, Harvey's, Wendy's, A&W, and it's so easy to go to those places over eating um, fresh fruit and wildlife and animals and wild game. Why do you think um, why do you think it's more affordable and accessible to go get McDonald's and stuff over gardening and working for your food?
That's
Do you
for
think it's because
that's for lazy people only. You know, they don't know what they're doing to their children. Their children is going to be overweight. All that pre-packaged stuff is no good for anybody. And for especially for Native people, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So many people will sit there and eat chicken and fries and gravy, and they, oh my gosh. And that is why so many of our people have diabetes. And
mm-hmm,
and I try to talk my children out of that. And but then, you know what they're doing is buying processed food, which is horrible too. You know, if they keep feeding, a mother keeps feeding a child processed food, they could come, what is that word I wanted? Under malnutrition. You know,
yeah,
kids have malnutrition if they don't eat properly. And when they get a cold or they get sick, you know, they just can't get over. They can't fight no cold.
mm-hmm. And
That's why it's
gardening,
so.
yeah, and gardening is a fun activity, but not everybody does it. And not everybody grows up in an environment where that's possible. So, what advice do you have for youth who are trying to live a greener and more traditional lifestyle, and why should they, and why they should? So, what advice do you give to people who are trying to live a healthier life and a more traditional lifestyle?
Okay, at my old age, I have two little gardens. I used to have a big garden back there, but I can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with extreme heat. I I can't stand the heat, like the extreme cold in the winter. That's all caused by global warming. And when you're gardening, uh, it it's so nice to be working with the earth and using a hoe, and it's good exercise, and you know you're doing it for your family and you're doing it for yourself, and you're teaching the young ones to do it too, because everything you do as an adult, these little children are picking that up, they're recording it in their brain, And they will do it too when they grow up, like I did when I was a child. That's called blood memory. You know, everything comes natural. Everything comes natural when you had good parents as teachers. You and not everybody has good parents. You know, they don't teach their kids nothing about growing food, or the thing is McDonald's, and they're the ones that have diabetes. And so many people have diabetes today. And I didn't know my daughter had it, and she didn't confess to anybody, but she was addicted to Coke and Pepsi and Tim Hortons coffee and donuts and whatever they sell. And she liked Wendy's. Anything from Wendy's was her choice of food. And we didn't know that she was that sick, and her kidneys failed, and she died in November. So it's very important what we put in our mouths. You know, it's and that's what we try and teach the children and or the mothers, and they look at you, oh ma, that was your lifestyle. You know, look at me now. You know, I have no amputations. You know, usually it affects your feet or your toes or your eyesight. Well, my eyesight is bad anyway. And so there's so many things to that story.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and so how can food heal and take care of our people?
How can they take care and heal the people?
How can food
That
heal and take care of our people?
well, the fish is very, very important. I believe I didn't talk about that, did I? The caribou, moose, deer, and the food that we're familiar with, and a lot of fish and rabbit and and chickens.
Recording stopped.
The recording has what?
I think we are still okay.
Yeah,
You
we're
can
good. Keep going.
You can just keep talking.
Oh, okay. And that is so important because the animals are the ones that are eating all the food that we're supposed to have in our body for our blood, and vitamin C, vitamin D, and that is so important, especially the fish. And my dad used to go fishing. There was all kinds of lakes where we lived, and fish was very important in our diet. And we didn't always have either baked fish or boiled fish. And my dad used to tell my mother, I want you to boil the fish today. And my mother would boil it, and it was good. I liked it. And then the water she boiled it in, we drank as tea. And now how healthy is that? Nobody does that today.
Yeah, I never
And
heard of anybody boiling fish and making it as a tea.
yeah, you can make soup out of it too. And today, having a good soup made out of fish, it's really good. And baked fish.
Yeah, and it's really it's really important to look at our environment and take those resources when they're ready. In a certain seasons, like same with tapping trees, it has a good source of vitamins and helps you when you're lacking the different vitamins. Isn't my grandmother just so precious? She was amazing today. We had a few technical difficulties with the pre-recording, but everything went really well. And thank you for tuning in for that. And we're also going to be talking about food with our next guests, like Adrianne, Kitty, and Tawyna. So first we're going to introduce them. And so first one is Adrianne Xavier. She is the acting director of Indigenous Studies program at McMaster University, and her master's and doctoral research focus on Indigenous food security and sovereignty. Number two, we're also joined by Kitty Lickers, who is also her mom. Kitty Lickers is a mom, grandma, gardener, teacher, and a feeder of people. As a community food animator on Six Nations, Kitty teaches and promotes growing, preserving, and eating fresh local food. Our next one is Tawyna Gadzio Brant is the owner of Chef of Yowego, is the owner and a chef of a Yowego by Chef Tawyna Brant. She's an Indigenous fusion cuisine shop based in Oswego. Tawyna has also been in a restaurant industry for 26 years and is passionate about learning food and working with Haudenosaunee foods, along with helping her people and become more food secure. So welcoming our guests, and we're so happy to have them. They're so wise, and they're teaching, they're doing amazing things in the community, and I am so happy to have them, and I look up to all of them, all of the women who we're going to be talking to today. So I want to start off by asking a question to all three of you. So Adrianne, Kitty, and Tawyna, with your knowledge about food, knowledge about Haudenosaunee foods, if you had to recommend one food as the most nutrient rich, which one would it be? And that's to Tawyna, Kitty, and Adrianne. So yeah, open-ended question. Anyone can answer that question. If you want me to repeat it, I can. So the question was,
we're not going to be just silent the whole time, right, guys?
so
I'm gonna. Kitty can't unmute, just technical difficulties.
okay, no problem.
Do you want to weigh in first?
We're gonna ask somebody the question.
Got it. I got it.
Sure. Oh, okay. So what did I think was the most nutrient dense? Did you say?
Yeah. What is the most nutrient rich food?
Well, I would probably say our three sisters. Just because together they make a perfect protein, and like if you have that, you don't need anything else. You don't need meat. You don't need anything else. Really, it provides your carbs from the corn. You're getting all kinds of vitamins from the squash. The beans are just like everybody should eat more beans, if you ask me. So, I think that little trifecta, I think would be our, what I would say for that.
It's
I have
it's
to
why
agree
they
with
call them our
Tawyna.
sustainers.
That's right.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And the thing of it is, it in the right combination, made like into a Three Sisters soup, it's the right amount of protein, like Tanya said, the right amount of carbohydrates. It's the perfect amount of amino acids that our body needs to then digest the protein that's in the beans. There's just a few things missing that you would then get, hopefully, that will grow into the plant from the soil. But yeah, that's the perfect food. If you were looking for one in particular, that'd be hard. Hey, Tanya, Adrianne, I can't think of one single one but if you said, okay, you only get one food, I don't know, that'd be hard. But those three in particular, corn, beans, and squash together, you can't beat that combination. You can actually exist on that if you had to. It wouldn't be super adventurous as far as food went eating wise, but definitely that's the one.
I don't know. I've seen Tanya's menus. It could be a little bit adventurous. There's some really good options with the Three Sisters.
Oh man,
Depends if you get a couple more.
Her blue corn soup is to die for. Just saying, I love it.
And
I'm
when
a
have you had
big
this
fan.
and not shared some?
I heard. It was, I really, I wasn't sneaking off and having food without you.
It kind of sounds like you were actually.
And she makes a killer, like everything salad. There's this, I heard again, I heard.
Uh-huh. Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Do we all agree on the Three Sisters being the most nutrient rich combination? Yeah, and it's really interesting, like the story of the Three Sisters and how they work together and how they're planted in the garden together traditionally. And that, like, almost every single garden that I know has the Three Sisters in it because they work so well together. And I don't think a lot of people know why they work well together. So does anybody want to say like how you're supposed to plant them?
I will, if that's okay. Adrianne, Tanya, is that all right? So, okay. So I love, first of all, I love to grow mounds of those. We did at the community garden this year grow a field mound, which is where we had our corn in the center, we had beans around it and then squash around that, but it was on a 1/4 acre. They grow together, and it's kind of a catch-22. You have to do it more than 1 year in the same spot. The corn being and with the story, the older sister comes up first. That's the first one that you put in, and it kind of creates the anchor of the mound, right? It starts that mound, and then you plant the baby sister around. The beans go in the ground, and the baby sister crawls up the older sister, and it's a interesting thing is that beans capture nitrogen from the air. So corn is a big nitrogen eater, so it captures the nitrogen. However, you have to have grown beans in that space before if you want to have the excess nitrogen the corn needs, because it won't be in the soil, won't be captured and put into the soil till the following year. It doesn't happen they don't come up and then do it. It comes up, it does it over the year, and then it's there for the next year. So if I'm going to put a mound, I generally put beans in that spot, and then the mound goes there after. So, and then of course the middle sister at the bottom, and I love when I get to tell the story because it's a protection. Underneath of squash leaves in particular are prickly. There's this little hairs that come down, and it deters critters from coming in there and bugs, and it also has the special purpose of covering that mound in such a way that it protects and keeps the moisture in the mound, because beans need lots of moisture, the corn does. So the squash at the bottom with the big leaves, it creates like a canopy that protects everybody's roots from the hot sun, and it holds the moisture into that mound in particular. Because if you think about it, and people talk about this all the time, if you grow things in a mounded area, logic says that the moisture would evaporate or run away from that mound. But in reality, in because of the way of growing those three things in particular together in the squash, it holds the moisture in that mound better than if it was flat surface. And there's a science behind it, and there's lots of big words and discussion that you can put into, but at the end of the day is the middle sister's doing her job by keeping the weeds away, because squash won't let weeds grow because it inhibits the sunlight from getting to them, and keeps the moisture in there. And you need that moisture for the nitrogen to stay in the soil. So
Yeah,
that's
and those squash leaves are huge. Like you've helped me plant my garden at the ceremonial house, and I gave and you helped me plant the garden, and I gave all the produce that came from it and the medicines to elders in the community. But those leaves were huge. Like they're like
yeah, they get really big. They have a big job to do. They have a really big job to do. So that's they grow incrementally to how much ground they have to cover, which is, people don't realize that if you have a smaller garden, your leaves will be spaced to the size that you're growing your mounds in, or the squash is growing in. We could talk. We literally could talk all night about corn, beans, and squash. We literally could.
Yeah, so. They like the beans, or no, the squash, like they grew so fast and so far. It was honestly crazy, and they're just like going to my other beds, and they're curling up around like the different around it. So it was like really crazy, and that was my first time planting them.
And they were beautiful gardens. I'm just gonna say, you guys did a great job. I was fascinated. You need to know, everyone, that they had to carry the water out there to water those gardens down in the boxes, and the ones at the top, they had to carry water. So it was a lot of work, just like Bertha said. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely a lot of work, because we had a truck full of soil, and then we had to shovel all that soil onto the ground. And there was actually some seeds of corn, and those seeds that were in the truck, in the bed of the truck, actually like grew spontaneously all around the garden. So there was like corn and strawberries, some corn, the sweetgrass. It was very crazy. They did their own thing, and we still use their corn for all of that. But
That's nice.
Thank you. Thank you for helping us. And that was the first time I met you, was during that process. So Tawyna, I have a question for you. You own your own restaurant, which you're at right now in the background, which is amazing, and I try to go there all the time. Could you tell us about it and how you are revitalizing Haudenosaunee food culture?
Well, if I was brave enough to take my phone off, I'd give you a walking tour, but I probably just lose everybody. But sorry, you wanted to tell me about the restaurant? Yeah, so it was kind of a spur of the moment COVID project. Most people get years to plan having a restaurant. So when one became available in the community, I was kind of next in line, like on the list. I've been on the list in this plaza since before I was a mother, so at least over 8 years ago. So I guess it was just, I took it as a sign of fate that, the fact that my name came up and happened to be a restaurant establishment, I just thought was pretty crazy. And it was probably the first time in this community when something like a kitchen's actually opened up, where somebody was able to, reinvent the place, I guess you could say. So former owners wanted to retire early, and they were only planning on being open another year or two, and COVID just kind of was like, eh. And looking at it now, a year later, I guess they probably made the right decision. So it was a quick project for me. It wasn't like I had like a business plan and all these things together, be like, oh, I want to do this, right? So it just seemed like a lot of things really fell into place for it to happen, and it was a lot of opportunity. So I'm probably the only person in the world right now that's thankful for COVID, because it definitely wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened without it. I was able to get a loan through my catering company I'd been doing for, I don't know how long, since 2004 or something, because of tourism that, they're giving out loans. So I put it towards this. So
so amazing that you and your sisters are all have their own businesses in the plaza, which is groundbreaking in itself that all three of you sisters, speaking of three sisters, um, are actually have their own business in
Oh,
the
there's one more.
plaza. Oh, yeah, one more. Sorry. Yeah, but like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I thought
crazy.
that was pretty crazy. They were already there, and it's nice to be a stone throw away, I guess. I don't know how they beat me in here actually, but they had a little shop. If anybody was really interested, I don't know. I don't know how that happened. I should ask.
Yeah, and I think not too long ago, like I think I seen Dakota's post and she said that all of the businesses in the plaza were owned by Mohawk women. Women.
It's all women, but yeah, I think it is all Mohawk women. Awesome.
Yeah. Mohawk women. Speaking.
We're entrepreneurial people.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what is the connection between food and language that you have? Because I know that your menu is in Kaniekaha and also English.
Yeah, that was I guess something that was always at the back of my mind, that if I had that opportunity to do that, because I kind of see food as one of those missing links in the chain, that there's so much going on with the revitalization of our culture, with language and people learning how to do traditional technical skills and regalia and all these things. I always kind of felt that food was kind of like left back here, and it's so important to our people. Everything revolves around our food. Our ceremony cycles for the year revolves around our food. Our creation story involves food. Like everything we do goes back to food. Even our technical skills go back to foods. Even if you're woodworking, you're making corn pounders, you're making, like, everything to me anyways goes back to food. So to be able to reintroduce those to people, because it's like, even they'll grow a garden, but then the squash just goes to rot, or the corn just sits in the cupboard for years, and people weren't really taking those out and using them. So I get a lot of people kind of like, I got these beans, do you want them? And I'm like, no, I want to see you cook them, or I want to see you plant them, right? Like, I don't. A lot of people just collect that stuff in their kitchens, and I try to encourage them to take it out, dust it off, it's still good. Definitely use it, and that's why even with my menus are like a transition kind of cuisine, I guess you would say, or people call it like indigenous fusion, or modern indigenous. And for me, that's the big thing. Like, I can do pre-colonial menus, that's fine, but I'm in a community where that's so far removed that we need to make it, modernize it, and make it normal and make it approachable. And I think that has a bigger impact with people, because they're working that into their diets, and they're not they don't feel weird about it next time, or they're like, oh, I could have did that years ago. What, just change some rice? Like, and you're making an indigenous meal. And a lot of it is also just reminding people of just what our contributions were to the culinary world, that, half the food on here is, indigenous, but you don't even think of it that way, like normal things like tomatoes and things like that. That we're able to showcase that again. And I try to stick to Haudenosaunee for when I'm doing stuff, but like, I'm open to any indigenous foods, because I know they're all healthy, and I know they're benefiting our people by using them. So yeah, the language was just something that kind of fell in with that, and I thought it was a really good opportunity for people to be able to practice those language words, and myself included, right? Like, I'm not fluent by any means. It was just kind of always in the kitchen, right? Like, I started working in kitchens when I was 12, so I didn't really have time for stuff like that, right? And but I have that perfect opportunity now, that I do have somebody on staff who's a translator, an amazing translator, and one of the only ones that can actually do all three dialects of Mohawk language. And I'm really honored to have him on staff, and I absolutely want to promote his tutoring services as well. And I'm really thankful that he just kind of came at the right time, and we work awesome together. And it's like, we already have this awesome flow where I could start something and just finishes it, and there's no words, like, it just gets done. So I think we're both really thankful for that relationship. But yeah, and just a lot of the conversations we've had, because I learned so much from him about foods, or how those words break down, and what they talk about, and those can influence menus. And a lot of what people don't see is just actually how much indigenous foods they're eating when they are eating this stuff. It might look normal. I'm just like looking at the menu right now, and I'm just looking at some things and it's just like, they have no idea there's Labrador tea in that, or we use Brant powder on those. And there's, you know, there was wild onions in that thing that got, you know, cooked all night or braised all night long. And I can't write all that on a menu, right? Like every spice and seasoning and thing that I use, but I think people would actually be really surprised. And I'm kind of sort of hoping for a project that's coming up that's actually going to be able to let me like let people see that happen, but they're actually getting when they come to you, like, oh.
Wow. And yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm so happy that you're doing that and that your restaurant exists, because we've needed it for so long, and I don't know why it didn't happen sooner. Like, I think that like you should have it like all along, and that we needed you all of these years. And yeah, I'm so proud of you, by the way, and for doing that and having your restaurant there. And so we also have a few questions from our viewers. So the first one for you is, what's on the menu and why do they serve those foods?
Well, I guess the most exciting part is I tell people that I don't have a set menu, and that really confuses them. So I didn't think it would be so hard to do that around here. They're like, what? You can't call in? I was like, I didn't get a phone because I don't want people to call in. Why? Because I want to come here. I want to see your face. It takes us 5 minutes to get the menu out. You're going to do that sitting in a drive-through. You're going to do that calling somewhere and going to pick it up. Oh, it's not ready yet. So we wanted to get rid of all those variables of things of how we cater to people in the community, because we're so set to like, okay, well, I better call. I feel like eating in an hour. So I wanted to change all that. I'm like, why? Why do it the same? Why do I want to do what everybody else wants to do? So being a chef, like that's one of the things where you get the most tired of what you're doing is by cooking. You know, it's like slowly dying in the kitchen when you have to make the same menu every day. So originally I just thought I was like, maybe I'll do seasonal menus, but I'm like, we have so many amazing foods that I couldn't pick that, and not knowing or having sources for stuff that I know I'm always going to have it. Like that's just not a reality for Indigenous foods or Indigenous kitchens right now. But it does inspire the menus that it is going to change seasonally with what are we eating at that time. So right now it's a lot of corn, it's a lot of like game meats and things like that. So we're coming up to, you know, sap season. So it's going to be sap and fish are going to be running, and you'll see how slowly how the menu is going to change, where we might be, you know, I want to kick it up and do healthier stuff. So it might be like fish just poached in sap or something like that, right? And they're simple dishes, but they're working with our foods. But I do, you know, I got 20,000 people here that I have to be like, okay, like it's okay, you can try it, right? So we're teaching the community how you can make something more approachable and make it more familiar to make them more comfortable with what it is that they're doing. So that was my inspiration for having a menu that was going to be different all the time. So I try to have 3 different specials every day. We try to have corn soup all the time. I don't know if that'll be in the summer, but it's definitely, I want to do that for the winter. And then I usually have 2 other soups on as well. And, you know, just other fun stuff. We have coffee and all that jazz and they're from Indigenous producers like Spirit Bear and Birch Bark Company. And I also got a bunch of Sakari products from Sakari Farms now. So I'm hoping to offer a lot more just Indigenous foods. We got some stuff coming in from Chef Dave Smoke McCluskey. We got some, he's actually doing hominy, longhouse hominy grits. He's got his lion Mohawk red masa, and we got like a lot of cool fun stuff that I want our community to be able to see, like this is out there, why aren't we doing it too? Right? Like there's so much room in the food industry for that. And I want to see Indigenous people doing that before, you know, non-Indigenous people come take it from everybody else, everywhere else, right? If you don't hop on that train beforehand, it's, you know, it's a fleeting opportunity. We know that. So I just like to be able to encourage people, support those producers, and encourage people that are new to being into that. And you know, at the end of the day, we're all needed, and non-Native people as well are going to need it. So you know, it's time to get to work.
Yeah. And you're saying you wanted to try some healthy stuff that day, but I think everything on your menu is always healthy and so much better than McDonald's or anything else anybody could ever eat. That's just like, it's always healthy. So,
You've been here since November. I haven't even put oils in the fryers yet. So I'm trying to, I think I'm just gonna get rid of that and I need a bigger stove already. So we're almost going out of this kitchen already. So I'm kind of fearful for events to be taken off and doing catering and stuff. So but that's
Yeah,
budget.
but I thought
Worry
those
about that later.
And so we have another question, and I think maybe this is one related to what they're looking at, and it says maybe a picture that you sent in that we can't see right now. It says, "Is that sunflower petals in the soup?"
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a succotash, and yeah, we put there's sunflower in there, and it's like made with sunflower oil, and there was seeds in there, and they were just happy to be in season, so throw that in there too. It's good.
Awesome. And yeah, if any of our viewers have any more questions, you can just write them down, and we will yeah. And anyway, someone yeah, there's just another comment coming in, but I just said those dishes look awesome. So that's just from our commenters. Yeah, if any of our viewers have any more questions for our guests, you're more than welcome to write them in the comments. So I have another question for Adrianne. We know you've been awarded the McMaster Indigenous Research Institute called Indigenous and Community Scholar Fellowship, working with 6 nations on food security and sovereignty. Could you explain what the difference is between food security and food sovereignty for us?
There's two ways that I want to do that actually. One of them is the very first simple one. And it's going to sound crazy. The difference is between fast food and Tawyna's restaurant. Because everybody could have access to cheap and available food, and Tawyna's food could still be just as inexpensive, but it's providing people the choice of how they access their food. So food security was originally designed, and it was labeled as the need for enough caloric intake for a human to survive. Not to thrive, not to be happy, not to be healthy, but just to survive. That was considered food security, which is really backwards, because when they talk about food security, it's actually the lack of security that they're referencing. So food sovereignty, however, is something that everybody today, and including the people that work on your project and the work that you do, Makasa, we are all a part of food sovereignty. That's when people have control of the system around how they access and get the food that they choose for themselves. So we're a really neat combination of people, because food security is about making sure everyone has enough. And I think that, and I say this to people, and it's always a little bit strange, if all you can afford and what you have in your house is like Pop-Tarts or fast food, but it's what you have, I'm going to say eat it. I still want you to eat. If, however, you have Pop-Tarts today and you met my mom and Tawyna, and they've given you seeds, and they're like, hey, I know a little bit of stuff about gardening. Do you want to do this? Here's the Three Sisters garden. There's the seeds. Take it and go and do that. You have planted that first seed of sovereignty in that person's house, because they now have the opportunity to feed themselves in a way that is of their choosing. One of the biggest differences in the world right now is that as Indigenous people, we didn't have the connection to those traditional foods. Not everybody knows that things like, everybody thinks, oh, traditional foods, okay, like corn, beans, and squash, maybe, or they think like wild game, rabbits, venison, that's the first go-to. But when we think about being empowered to be food sovereign, what we're really talking about is, I know how to do the things that it takes for me to be happy and healthy and fed, but I also have enough food so that I could then share that with my neighbor, because that's part of being sovereign too. And I might not love to garden, and don't tell my mom that it's not my favorite thing. It's not my favorite. And I feel bad sometimes about that. 100% every day I would go to Tawyna's place and be like, I'm eating all the stuff that, and it might be the exact things that my mom grew, but I'd be like, I'm gonna take it over there. There's nothing that's unsovereign about that. We're not talking about not having the option. And that's the thing. Food security is understanding that we're talking about being fed and being healthy. But food sovereignty is about us as people saying, you know what, part of being sovereign means having the power and ability in our homes, in ourselves, to choose the food as well. And some days that choice is going to be all those things that were terrible that that your grandma talked about. You know, Bertha talks about the reality of fast food and the disconnection, but there's a woman who taught in residential, like she fed residential school survivors. Mm-hmm. The disconnection of the food from the people who survived that means that they may not feel the connection to the language and the food that Tawyna is producing. That's what that sovereignty is about. When we can say to people, if you are ready to be sovereign in your food system, in yourself, then maybe go talk to Kitty and learn how to grow the food yourself. And if you're not there yet and you're not ready, but you still want to stick your toes in the water and see what it's like, but you're not also a speaker and you're not prepared, then you know what, stop at Tanya's and pick up something that's going to connect you physically to the food that you're interested in. It's going to connect you to the language because the menu's there and you can look at it. There it is in the language, there it is in English. Now you have a relationship to that traditional food. And when you're ready, you might go back and be like, okay, for years and years, I've been eating at this place and I love the corn soup. I love all the food. Kitty, what do I do to be able to grow it? I can do it by myself. That progression for people of deciding to move forward in choosing food that is our food, that's what the sovereignty looks like for us. That's how we all connect wherever we are, because everyone has that opportunity. And that's what food security and food sovereignty are about.
Thank you for explaining that. And I think, yeah, I totally agree with you. And you explained it so well. And Kitty and Tawyna, what do you think about what Adrianne had said? What are your thoughts?
I always think there's one little tiny thing that's missing in there. There's always that component of sustainability. And so security and sovereignty, and somewhere in between those, connecting the two is that sustainability, that component of it that makes us be the people that we need to be in order to protect the earth, grow the food that we need to grow, protect Mother Earth so that everything is there, so the animals are still there, so the plants are still there, so the medicines are still there. That sustainability component is a part of it. It's not often talked about in that way. Sustainability is the things like Tawyna talking about working with small organizations that do really cool things, sustaining those skills and abilities that will continue us. I heard the most fabulous thing once, and I talk about it all the time, and it says, be the answer to your ancestors' prayers. And I just, every time I think about that, I think, okay, what do I need to do today because someone 7 generations ago prayed for us to be doing what we're doing because they knew this was coming, right? So Tawyna doing what she does, Adrianne doing what she does, Makasa, you doing what you do, me doing what I do, all of those things, we are answering our ancestors' prayers. And I think that is a component of sovereignty. That is a component of sustainability. That is a key component to food security. All of the pieces of it are out there. And it's things like this where we get together and we're able to talk and share this information and knowledge with others and from everywhere. Not just because I'm very biased and I'm going to tell this and some folks are going to go, ugh. But I always say this, Indigenous people, we have all of the answers. We have them all. Our ancestors made sure we had all of the answers. So now, in order for us to make the world back better, the way it cared for, the way it's supposed to be, we now have to help others to understand what we know. So these kind of things do it. And that also, I think, is a component of food sovereignty.
Tawyna, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was same wavelength as Kitty there, that adding about sustainability. I was kind of thinking that too, the addition of that. But yeah, when I think of food security and food, I don't know, I don't use those terms. I'm an academic. I'm always like, oh, whenever somebody needs a PhD, they think of a new word for us, like decolonize and the whatever. And I'm just like, I cook the food, man. I'm like, does it taste good? Okay, we're good. But in saying that, in terms of sustainability and security, I think food security is a lot of, like you say, you can go and you can and find out how to grow all these things by yourself. But right now we're all like, we've done that, right? We've been there. So right now, I think what we have to do is, like I said, we're connecting those dots and those links in that chain for where it's missing. How are we going to fix our food systems? So having a store like this, if I'm able, like when I make things, I don't make them like they're trying to be like, oh, they're so out there. Oh my God, I've never had that before. I'm never gonna have that combination of ingredients again. I don't cook like that at all. I do home style because I want to influence the person that's coming here to eat, to encourage them to do that at home. And I want to make it something approachable that they can work into their own diets. I can collect 50 ingredients. I already got a whole shelf back there. You know, of the fancy things you've never seen before, but that's not benefiting anybody. That's just, you know, feeding ego and Instagram, right? So I feed crowds, I don't feed Instagram. That's why my pictures aren't that. I'm not a photographer. But to me, the whole other side of it, about being not food secure, but it's the other one, food
sovereign,
sustainability, or security, yeah, is when we work together. Right, that we're missing that. Like everybody can grow a Three Sisters garden, but how are we going to feed thousands of people? And we did that, and we know how to do that, and we come from that, right? So it's not about growing this, that, and the other thing. Is how do we get a community of people to come here to grow something that's going to be substantial, or it's going to make an actual impact on our people, not just an opportunity to say, oh yeah, I know what that tastes like, right? And I think that's something that's happening, it's slowly happening, and I'm really thankful for this generation that's coming up right now, because they're like really taking it on. I'm kind of like a millennial now, so that interest is there, but they've been able to raise their children from the ground up on our foods, and knowing what their foods and where they come from, more importantly. So I think, yeah, in a couple of years, you're gonna see some really amazing people coming out of the woodwork, and you know, and that should be a pat on the back to all Indigenous people, knowing that we're getting back to our original teachings, and we're getting healthier because of it. And, there's no stopping us now.
Yeah,
that's right. Sorry.
No, you can go ahead. I was just gonna say, like, I think everybody has a role in food security and food sovereignty, and including the water protectors and the land protectors, because like they're protecting our water and our land that food can grow and we can garden, and so we can actually live off of it, and fighting all these corporations and oil industries, and it's all a part of that. And that is definitely a part of the discussion of like food sovereignty and security, and we need to definitely recognize them too, for all of the fights that are happening, like Land Back and Line 3, and the fight that's continuing with Nestle and the other water companies that are trying to take the water and replace Nestle and extract more water from us. So yeah, it's definitely a big part of that, and water is now a big part of that too, because we never really had to worry about water before, and now we do, because it's more important than oil, it's more important than anything, and it's running low, and it's very scary reality of what's happening. We have like less than 2% of fresh water in the entire world, and water has officially been on the market on Wall Street, selling the same price as oil and gas. So it's really a scary reality that people don't think that water is a human right. And so there's definitely huge battles that are going on right now, with land and water. And that is, yeah, we have to recognize that, I think, when talking.
Yeah, well, it's definitely scary that we're dead in the middle of that, right? We're dead in the middle of all that fresh water source. And we talk about wars being fought over water one day, and we're literally in the middle of the biggest freshwater source in the world. Like that's, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is super scary. But we can do, and we can fight like whatever we can do, and we all play a part of where we fit and where we can put our skills the best. And yeah, so I have another question from the comments, and it's to Kitty. What are foods we should be growing for those that don't do gardening like myself?
That's a really good question. I love when I get asked that, because when you start off, the things that are easiest to grow, that are most impactful to your diet, that you can add in easily, is greens. Some of them you need to grow, some of them you can go out and pick, dandelion greens, and I'm sure Tawyna could come up with a whole bunch too. And but greens, I always tell people, even if you have no space, no porch, no patio, no garden, no yard, you can grow greens in pots. You can grow them in coffee cups, in your window. So you start, and then you're able to add them. So just imagine, like, for example, today for my soup class, we made white chicken chili. So it can be changed. Like you can use wild turkey in it instead of chicken, like different ways that we would change it to be foods that our DNA recognizes, right? But the greens are always going to be part of what we would have eaten. So that would be the place to start. That's what I always tell people. You can start by growing any kind of green that you find appealing. I want it to be some, I don't want people just to grow things to say, oh, I grew this. I want them to grow something where they say, I grew this because we eat it, right? So I won't grow arugula. I put it in the garden, but I won't grow it. Tawyna, do you use a lot of arugula? Because I'm not fond of the taste. But sorrel, that also grows in the wild, I will tell people to grow that. And I tell people to grow that because kids will eat it. Tastes like sweet tarts. So they may not eat a salad made from Boston lettuce, but they might eat salad made from sorrel because it tastes like sweet tarts. It has that sharp kind of bitter taste that sweet tarts have. So, and you know, most kids have had sweet tarts or know what they're like, but it has that same taste. Of course, no sugar, and it's not packaged and there's no chemicals in it, but it's that same mouth taste for them. So greens, that's where I tell people to grow it. If you're not a gardener, and greens are easy to grow, put a little bit of soil in a cup or a pot, sprinkle your seeds on, and sprinkle a handful of soil over top. Not too deep. You don't want them too deep. Give them a drink, give them some light, and grow your greens. You can pick them small, pick them big, put them in the garden later. That's the best place to start. If you can't even do that, then when I was growing up, my mom, you know, when you buy onions, there's always an onion that starts to grow. She used to put a little bit of water in the bottom of a coffee cup and stick that growing onion in there. And all through the winter, she had 2 or 3 of those going, where she would snip off the greens and throw them in our tuna, in our salads, in our soups, so we were literally getting fresh vegetables from something that was kind of left over. You cut the bottom of your celery off, put it in a plate, add some water, keep water in it, you'll get celery sprouts, and you can put that into your food. There's lots of little tiny ways to begin growing your own food. Like those little bitty ways that make that impact. Number one, because it's something you grew, but number two, because your body is actually like craving that. When people say, oh man, I don't know what I'm hungry for, your body knows. And if you could take time to try the different vegetables and things that are out there, then your body would say, that's the one, that's what we're lacking, that's what we need. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something fresh and green. So that's my suggestion for what to start growing first, is different kinds of greens. And yeah, it'd be nice if you could grow the things like deer tongue lettuce is nicer and better for you than a green lettuce. But if you like green lettuce, maybe try them both, you know, or Swiss chard or kale or arugula even, I guess, if you like it. It's too sharp for me. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, or 3 sisters.
Yeah, well, it's nice. A 3 sisters garden is really nice to grow, but I get lots of folks that come to me that say, I don't have space, right? That's one of the drawbacks that we have right now, is we're really lucky down here. We have lots of space, but I have helped, I'm going to say, you know, in excess of 500 people figure out how to grow things in buckets on their porches, like whole gardens in just pails and cans and stuff on their porches. So I kind of cater to both. And being the community food animator at Health Service, Six Nations Health Services, I'm given the opportunity all the time to help people put in to grow gardens. We did a program last year where we put in either a garden or a porch planter or a mound or help them with their garden. 450 families. So 450 families. We do our vegetable program on Wednesdays. And one of the things we're going to add to that in the next 2-3 weeks is we're going to give them white corn still on the cob. We're going to give them ashes. We're going to give them direction. There's going to be a video. So they'll learn how to lie corn on their own. I think every time I think about that, when I think of the numbers of people that we're able to, Tawyna, that you're able to introduce to food because they're looking for a nice restaurant meal that's close to home, that's delicious. That is just one more way that we're introducing people to eating better, being sustainable, being sovereign, and then eventually getting to the point where they want to try and grow that themselves. Not, Tawyna, not that they'll never, because I grow food all the time and I still, don't tell Adrianne, eat stuff from your restaurant lots. So
when is this, seriously, what is happening? When is this going on?
So did that answer the question, Makasa? Shh, Tawyna, no, shh, don't say nothing.
You've never met that lady before, have you? You've never even seen her.
Don't even know who she is.
We have a plaza? Just kidding.
What? I live way down by First Land. I don't even know what that is.
Oh my gosh. And I'm way at the other end on 7 Pine right now. Literally. So yeah, our next, if you don't have anything to add, Tawyna.
I don't remember what the question was.
What are foods we should be growing for those who don't know, who don't do gardening?
Who don't do
well, I would just say grow what you like, right? Like there's no point in growing it if you're not going to eat it. Yeah, I you touched on that. Just things like strawberries are pretty easy. I like well, my mom was telling me as asked before about like working with kids and growing stuff in schools, and she's like, "Well, have these gardens and they get out of hand over the summer and they just let them go." But she just said she would recommend things like strawberries and like corn or squash because they're things that strawberries they're ready in June when the kids are still in school, and then squash is September and October when they get back. And she was that way you're not losing all the tomatoes are going to waste and things like that. So I think just thinking your schedule, what you can handle, what you think you'll actually eat, like just thinking of all those little points will really help you. And then, just seeing if it's possible for you to grow in your area, whether it's at your house, do you have enough light, do you have enough space, do you have, like it's pretty easy to, put a seed in the ground and I think a lot of people just don't realize how easy it is. But I think COVID was a perfect opportunity to let a lot of families know that. And there was a lot of organizations who gave out seeds and who helped with that. And the Mohawk Seed Keepers Garden, we were able to help 50 families do patches of different all Haudenosaunee varieties of seeds. In places like the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance, like we mailed out like hundreds of, probably thousands of packages, like all across the US and stuff, to help families get into that. But this was a time to slow down, to see what was going on in the community, and to watch those things grow, right? Obviously, we don't have time to do things. And I'm hoping that this was an opportunity. People say, yeah, like that was like one day's work. Then I get to visit my plants and then eventually we get to eat them. Right, and let people know just how simple it is, and to have like kitties and greens, you cut them off, you have a salad once in a while, like things like that, and to inspire their cooking too, right? I got these 3 things that came out of there, and I got one of each of them. What am I going to do with it, right? And all of those things go into it, because that's why I hate recipe cooking, and that's always the one thing. Oh, give us a recipe, and I'm like, I don't use recipes, so how the heck? It's like if I had to follow recipes, I wouldn't be a chef, right? So when I do that, I'm like, but I'd like to teach people how to use an ingredient and how you're going to work it into things, and how are you going to use it in ways, because you can teach somebody a recipe, but not everybody has the same palate, right? They're going to go home, I learned something today, but I'm never going to make that again. So how can you make this good for your home and do what's just what you're going to do and what you're going to use would definitely be, I guess, my suggestion for growing.
Exactly, because Tawyna, if you made a beautiful salad and it looked gorgeous, but it had arugula in it, I would never eat it. it's just not my favorite. I mean, so yeah, it's literally, like you said, about putting in the ground and growing the things that you know you will eat. And I hate to say this to folks, but the majority of the stuff that grows in your lawn and in the bush, those are all things that were here. And a lot of them have just been modified to grow like in controlled situations, right? So strawberries, for example, are a great example of that. When you said strawberries, I thought, oh yeah, I should have said that, because I took wild strawberries and put them in a planter. And by the end of the season, you couldn't tell the wild strawberries from the commercial ones, because with care and water every day, they became just like those commercial ones. Although the berries tasted better. They did.
Yeah,
They
I seen that when I was, I think I was in grade 5 or grade 6. Miss Jonathan, if you remembers, they used to live by where the arena was, and behind their house was just a big, like, it was all cow pasture, right? Just the arena and the Joe and everything now. So every year, her graduating class, she would invite for like a picnic at her house. And she told us that, she's like, oh, you know, there's all wild strawberries all back there, go pick some. And she's like, she was telling us about how it used to be, you know, this cow pasture, and the strawberries are really big. And I just like, I couldn't believe it. Like the wild strawberries were like the size of the regular one, like not the frankenberries, but you know, the regular ones. Yeah. But yeah, like with time, care, proper nutrients, like, you know, our stuff can be really amazing. And, I just think we're learning that, and by utilizing it, and our touch is the thing that makes it better and bigger. And you know, to me, that's just like putting that love and energy into it, and knowing that that plant's, knowing that it's been recognized, and you know, and it'll do what it is that we want it to do, or what it was put here to do, and we benefit from those things. So I think that's a lot of what's going on in terms of Indigenous food sovereignty movement right now, is people refamiliarizing themselves with the ingredients in their area. So instead, you can walk out your door, there's sorrel growing right there. Oh, there's 3 kinds of nettle right there. There's these mushrooms. I gotta figure out what they are, right? So we have those things, and it's an ever-changing flora. And you know, you're gonna get everything in the spring. You're gonna get those tiny little, you know, wild onions are the first things that come up, and ramps come up, and even the trout lilies. You can eat the flowers, you can eat the thing, you know, don't get crazy with them, but you can eat them. Little violets, all these things come up, and they're all beautiful. And I always say there's no reason why we can't, you know, our kids especially, be able to literally go outside and get a salad and come back. And, you know, we don't have an excuse for food security. It's just, you know, us not taking the time to figure that out is what the problem is.
Well, and a big portion of that is that the process that we're going through to decolonize our diet, right? To recapture, or relearn, or renew ourselves in terms of what our foods were. And they're everywhere. They're like, our medicine is the food that we ate. So, and it was literally everywhere. Like I always tell people, I look at them very serious and I say, you can eat skunk cabbage. And they're all like, ugh. But you can. If you eat skunk cabbage, as long as it's under 2 inches high, it's actually very nutritious and very good for you. And that's about the only time it doesn't smell like a skunk. But you can eat it. And that would have been something that we would have watched for. It's like, we could get into a huge discussion right now talking about how the impacts of colonization took away that. And we know, because I will tell you a perfect example of colonization that happened 2 years ago. I used to go and pick smartweed in this one particular patch, one space. But because things were colonized, someone literally built a house on my patch. It was a quiet spot. No one knew about it. I didn't tell people. I would get smartweed for folks from this patch, and I'd done it for years. And then one spring I went there to get it, and there was a house. My patch had been my patch had been colonized. And that's exactly what happened to a lot of our food, right? It literally, people sprawl when they came, and the colonization, not just of the traumas and all of that, is a big component of it, the biggest. However, just the very literal impact of that many people walking in a space, right? So I can remember walking with Ione Anderson and Doris. We were walking through the bush, and I remember Ione saying to me, she's like, well, walk in my footsteps. And I took her I took her for real. Like I really did. I really did. 1989. I'm gonna walk in your footsteps. So 30 years later, 32 years later, still walking in her footsteps. But that was what we did. We walked in single file. We knew enough not to walk on the plants because we ate them. But a portion of colonization that isn't very often thought of or thought about was how people walk just willy-nilly through the bush and how many things are being impacted by that. And literally we're walking on our food. I got a soapbox.
It's okay though, because sometimes that does help stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Some
it does help stuff. Things like, well, just disturbing mushrooms and spores and things like that.
Yeah.
We can definitely, there are pros and cons, and like I said, our touch and that thing being recognized, and it comes back and being vibrant, and I would check that spot for smartweed again though, Katie, because smartweed is a plant that it migrates. Like you might have been getting it for years, all of a sudden where did it all go? And it's like, oh, it's over there, right? So they're probably still, it's in that area. And touching on the skunkweed as well, you can use it when it's bigger, but it has to be cooked for a long time, so it's ideal for things like pit baking and things like that, where you're like covering stuff, and it doesn't do too much. I've tried it when it's big. Just like your tongue gets kind of numb on the side. That's what it apparently that's poisonous. But but if it's cooked for a long time, it's fine.
But you can use it when it's bigger. Is that what you said? You
can use but it has to be cooked. Yeah. You gotta. It can't be fresh.
No. Just when it's really tiny. Yeah, that's something. Yeah, and
but
you're
like
right about
that's what they would do, is line stuff, and it was indigenous foil.
Right.
Here's the thing about all of that conversation. When we're talking about people being connected or disconnected from food and having that knowledge or not having the knowledge, and people going, okay, this is a great conversation. What's skunkweed? It doesn't mean that our bodies and the DNA that we hold wouldn't recognize it if we ate it. Like, our bodies are going to respond to that food just like those plants are going to respond to us. We also are responding to the things that are being grown around us, the things that are being served in the restaurant. That, if you go to the community garden, or you go on, health services has done medicine walks, and other organizations do the same thing, and community members have seeds and have gardens. And when people are fed those foods that they may not have been exposed to, their bodies respond because they know. Even if their brain doesn't, even if our colonial history tells us that we've never had those things, it doesn't mean that we don't recognize that. And that's part of that reciprocation that we are giving back and forth. And part of that sometimes is just being open to trying something that, I don't know if I would want to try something that's called skunk anything. Maybe, you're really not selling me with the swelly tongue situation and all of that stuff. But at the same time, that's really what it comes down to, is we have all of these opportunities to try things, whether it is, fresh from the garden, and you see people making that connection for themselves to that food, or walking into your shop and saying, I have no idea what that is. I've never done it before. And a year from now, they might be growing it themselves, or sourcing it, or working with the same people that you're working with because they want it at home all the time. But our bodies know. It's just like when you have that first, you have a glass of water and it's clean and it's fresh and it's clean. That's, our bodies feel that same connection to food in the same way. We recognize the history of it in our bodies, even if we don't necessarily, like it's not my childhood memory of favorite foods.
I put a lot of, well, guys, like one of the reasons, like I said, like I was like, people don't even know really like what they're eating. I'm like, I put all this stuff on there and you have no idea, but or you might think you don't like something to be eating, long, but it's just that, right? And that's for me, like when I'm doing those things, I'm doing it with intention. I don't have to. It doesn't matter, or it might not affect the flavor much, but there's other reasons why I'm putting it there, and and that's just it, right? Those things your body needs, and different things that where you just want to ease it in there, and then be like, oh, I was eating it all along. Okay, fine. I can't believe you now. But just a lot of those things. It's just get it in there. You gotta hide it like vegetables for children. No,
right. Bertha's story about eating Bugs Bunny.
Yes.
Right. Kids don't know when they're eating rabbit pie or whatever, and they just looking at you.
And his woman.
For what?
Just kidding. The two of them back there. We're doing
Hey.
rabbit enchiladas tomorrow.
Yum. Oh. Yeah. Put a little order aside for me.
Sorry,
I love rabbit. Oh, there's Makasa. She came back.
a little bit. Yeah, I accidentally, my Zoom logged me out for some reason. So, but I'm back. That was a little bit scary.
We carried on without you.
Great. That's what we need. Yeah, so I'm just looking. Sorry, my other stuff got messed up a little bit. Yeah, so I think we'll move on to the next question. And that is, we already talked about how our foods are colonized and how our diets and our relationships to food changed by colonization. But did you guys want to have anything more to say? Because that was my next question, was how were our foods colonized and how were our diets and our relationships to food changed by colonization?
I don't know about you guys, but I think that's is like a 3 or 4 month conversation. It could go on a really long time.
Yeah.
Just what Tawyna does in her restaurant, what I do in the garden, what Adrianne does in the classroom. Each of those 3 ways of talking about food is trying to revitalize the connection we had to some of the foods, right? Like how Tawyna talked about when she was talking about a restaurant, how she's kind of introduced, and she just said, but infusing things in and giving them the opportunity to try them. And they're like, oh yeah, you were right, Tawyna. Yeah, I did like that. So when our foods were, to talk about how our foods were colonized, for me, there's a 2-edged sword for me, because part of the colonization was the taking away of some of the foods we ate, right? Don't go out and pick stuff out in the lawn or out in the bush. That's wrong. You buy it. Someone grows it here, then you eat it, and that's how you eat it. That's a part of colonization. A part of colonization, the big component of colonization, was when we were forced to be in communities and little houses of our own, and you have to eat this way because that's it. We could literally talk about that for a super long time. And I think just by the things that we're doing tonight, just by this, I really and truly believe that this is us taking that back. I know that colonization needs to be a conversation, and I know that it needs to be gone over, but my preference is always to talk about how we're taking that back, rather than talking about that problem. What are we doing? Tanya's talking about her restaurant. Adrianne's talking about her programming in her classroom and stuff that she does, the garden programs that I do with families, the seeds that Tanya's mom and I hand out to folks, like for them to grow, for us to keep those the seeds going that are from here, that the foods, the reclaiming of our hunting rights, our fishing rights, all of those kind of things, the decolonization. I have a real I have a running conversation going on with a professor. We talk about whether or not we've been decolonized enough, like have we, and I prefer to think that's not for me anymore. I spent a lot of time going over the colonization of us, and then I spent a lot of time essentially, and I'm old, and that's why I feel like I can do old lady stuff here. So the decolonization of it. Now I just feel like I'm me. I eat the foods that are part of who I am. That's how I've decolonized my food systems. I grow them the way I know they grow best. I know I work with the earth rather than against it. I eat at restaurants like Tawyna's. I listen to talks like Adrianne's. I understand the water component of who we are. You could literally, there are people who survive without eating food, but they can't survive without water. So as important a conversation is our food, it can't be a conversation without water. And I think as long as we're having those conversations, the strength of colonization is diminishing, it's being taken away, right? As long as we fight, as long as we talk, as long as we work, as long as we collaborate and cooperate and, you know, come together to do those things, just like we're doing right now, then I think we have decolonized to the point where we're able to say we know, because a big component of colonization was that we didn't know. We thought that that's how things had to go, or our ancestors did, or they were forced to do it that way, right? I get teary-eyed if I get too far into that conversation. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna interject for a minute.
Thank you.
Because it's a big conversation, and the question that you're asking is sort of, it's twofold, because my mom is right. There is a big part of what we are taught, and as the giant nerd that I am, and no shame to nerds because I love them and I am one and I enjoy that part of my life, but there is a huge piece of that, like, educational governmental system of knowledge that wants us to continue to talk about the colonization of food and people and history and what we've experienced. And it's real and it's true. And I can, you know, we can pinpoint things and how residential schools did things and what kind of relationship it created. But at the end of the day, what I prefer to talk about when I'm in a classroom or when I'm in a community or when I'm with my mom, which is what we do 90% of our time, we just talk about food and things that are important. And for me, it's about understanding that we are every single day building a relationship, whether that relationship is with ourselves, with our food, with other people and our food, with the knowledge that we either hold dear to us and have, or don't hold dear because we don't know it yet, and how we are going to connect with it. Are we going to learn language? Are we going to build that as part of our lives? Those are the things that are the outcomes of colonization. Our resilience is what is the outcome of colonization. Our ability to continue to grow and learn and be strong people is the outcome of colonization. That's the truth of what we are learning. We're not here to learn what colonization did to us. We have already been there. We lived through it. We're still living through it because colonization isn't gone. But our ability and our strength and our innate talent for finding, growing, and building each other up and our relationships to food, the world, water, environment, that's really the outcome. For me, that's the outcome. Every single time I hear someone talk about you, Makasa, and they're like, she's done this really cool thing. And there are little girls who look up already to what you're doing tonight. They're striving one day to be able to do something like this because it makes a difference. That's an outcome of colonization. That's the kind of outcome that I want more people to understand, because it doesn't need to always be a bad press story. What it needs to be is, we existed, we had a lot of things happen, and I'm not discounting any of those experiences. But Bertha didn't cook in those schools because she didn't want to help people. She cooked in those schools because people still need to eat. Bertha raised her family and said, I didn't want to have just a farmer. And you know, I loved Hubert. There is something joyful in their love story.
Mm-hmm.
That's an outcome of colonization. That's what we all need to focus on.
Yeah, and I think we're all resilient in that way. And so, I don't know, I'm just so proud of all of the women in my community, because we have a lot of academics, we have a lot of cooks, we have a lot of good storytellers. And I think my community is like one of the best communities out there.
You're not biased at all, I know.
Yeah. And yeah, we all have, the one thing that we all have in common here is that we all have strong mothers and a good foundation where we are able to thrive and we have a great community and great peers to look up to. Yeah, and I think we all have that in common, that we have followed almost in our mother's footsteps, and we have learned a lot in our a lot from our mothers. And I can see that with Tawyna, and her mother's a seed keeper, and then your mother's Kitty, and my mother is Dr. Dawn Martin Hill. So I think, yeah, that's definitely a big part in our paths, and it's really beautiful to see. Um, and that kind of leads to my next question. Adrianne and Tawyna, how did having a mother who is a seed keeper shape your journey? Tawyna, you'd like to answer that question first? Oh no, did you disappear?
Oh, she's back.
Back and better than ever?
Hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, just cut out for a second. I didn't hear what you said. Sorry.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Did you ask me
So,
conversation?
yeah, I was just saying, like, how our mothers are such powerful beings within our community, but also within our life. And I know what your mother does also, and she's a seed keeper. So that leads into my next question. With Adrianne and Tawyna, how did having a mother who was a seed keeper shape your journey?
I think, well, I definitely think it affects every day of my life, right? Like how you're raised is how, how you see the world. And I think she went, being an educator, she really went out of her way, because not only was she interested in our foods and things like that, it was about how you go through life and things, being, a forever student kind of thing, and a student of life, and making sure that we were all exposed to that. And she just did a lot of things that you never really, in the 90s, you never really seen people doing stuff, but she would be going around talking to older members of our families and people like her Uncle Joe back the lane and stuff like that. Like, and you got that real true, like, Haudenosaunee learning, right? Like, we're not learning everything online. We're not learning it through Google, or we're not learning it through a non-native person. We're not learning it through a book. We're just learning it through those conversations where they're simple, and our humor's there, and all of that passion and love that goes into things. That's something that you can't learn that from a book, but I don't like books, so I might be biased. but just you don't get that type of learning. You sit there and read a book about when's the perfect time to plant or something like that, or
Oh no, I think she might have froze. Come back.
Oh, froze.
Oh yeah, you're back.
Sorry. Yeah, it just like cuts out for a second and turns it back on. I don't know what happens with that. Did you want me to carry on, or?
Yeah, let's carry on.
Okay. But yeah, I just think her everyday interests were definitely imparted on us, because how could it not be, right? Like if you're doing a big garden, we're all kind of doing what it is we want to do, and the way that she brought us up really affected that. Like there was no, like, we grew up with.
Uh-oh. Okay, you're back.
No, it's just being stupid. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're all good.
I don't know why it's being goofy.
Yeah, you can just yeah, say what you're saying.
Yeah, it's being silly. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Alrighty. Yeah, no, I just thought it was good that we included us in her interests, and you want to garden, you want to do things, and be. Oh. My phone's going crazy now. My ear things are so. I don't know. I guess all I can do quickly is say that I'm thankful, and it affects every day of my life. There's no aspect of it that it doesn't affect, because those are your first influencers, and everybody wants to live a good, healthy life and do that for their children as well. And I'm thankful for a lot of her personal interests, because I definitely can't say, sitting here being an Indigenous chef, that anything that she taught me didn't affect what it is that my everyday is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your mother is amazing in that she has her own earth ship, and she teaches all of your nieces and nephews, and I think your children too, in the earth ship since COVID, which I think is really interesting. And they're learning from their grandma, and they're learning all of the things, all of like the gardening, or like I think they're learning a lot of traditional knowledge that's happening in that earth ship during COVID. So it's really interesting what's happening there. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm definitely thankful for it. Like I said, I have a lot of reasons to be thankful for COVID, which is kind of
yeah, I think she's like the only person that has a lot of good things coming out of COVID. Yeah, Adrianne, since you have a little bit better connection, did you want to add anything?
You know, it's funny. My mom talked about following in my own footsteps, and it's a lesson that I understand. But when I was a kid, it never occurred to me that it was any other way to live my life. Not because I was like, oh, I'm going to have a giant garden. And don't get me wrong, there are like 3 gardens at our house. It's not like we don't have them. They should just keep popping up. But when I was a kid, everything that I ate came from what my mom either grew or traded, or someone we knew like genuinely close to us produced. And if it wasn't something that was produced, then it was something that someone knew how it lived and where it existed in the world. We didn't always have to grow it ourselves to know what it was or where it was. And that was just my life. I never ever understood for a really long time that there was an option. My mom, she made bread every week. We had food that she had canned. So canned food to me came in glass jars. Like that was canned food, not in a can. And that was just the way of the world. But I also understood that it didn't mean it was the only way that was possible, and other people had other ways. But for me, as I got older, I also started to see that people wanted that. People have always been connected to, and I mean, you only have to meet my mom one time to be like, I will follow her into the bushes anytime. This is super fun and it's enjoyable. And she has that way about her. And I've spent my whole life that way. And absolutely, I would follow in those footsteps. Partly because I understand that there are sustainable repercussions to, running willy-nilly through the bush. Like I probably would if I wasn't paying attention, because that's something I would do. But the truth is when your parent is a seed keeper, there are things that happen, and each of us has a mom in this room that was the same. The seeds that you keep, Makasa, are different, but they're still very much the seeds of knowledge and understanding and patience and a strong fight. And being a kid who was at a protest against Monsanto when I was, 3 months old or something, apparently I was a protester when I was a really tiny kid. I think that every kid has a parent who fights for them. Sometimes that fight is really big and it's against large people and corporations and things. And sometimes that fight is really small and it's just like, I'm going to fight every day to make sure you have good food and that you are housed and cared for. And everybody should be grateful no matter what for that. So, I mean, honestly, I agree with Tawyna. I'm grateful for the life that I have and the things that I've learned. I wouldn't be here otherwise. Truthfully, someone asked me once, did you always know this would be like your life's work? And bless them, they were interviewing me for like the CBC or something. And I was just like, oh, no, what? And I was all affronted and terrified because it never occurred to me that this was something that I was doing. It was just how I was supposed to live. And then all of a sudden it was this thing that I was representing, and then there was pressure, and I was like a teenage kid and I wanted to rebel, and no, I didn't really. But it was the first time that it occurred to me that I could have wanted to not follow in my mom's footsteps. I'm that one person on earth who is like, one day I'm going to open my mouth, my mom's going to come out, and I'm going to, like, I can hardly wait. And I hope she doesn't know about it, because I want to tell her that I don't listen, and it doesn't work because she's sneaky like that. But I think that we're really lucky. And truthfully, in this community, I think there are a lot of people who are really lucky to have the families and the relationships with the women that are here that have shown us really what is possible in the world, and we're doing it. I mean, just this day alone is proving that we're all doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's what traditional knowledge is a lifelong journey, and it's passed down from your grandparents to your parents to yourself and to your future generations. Like that's all traditional knowledge, and that's why it's super hard to learn that like within a classroom, because it really is a lifelong journey, and it's shaped by your peers and by your mother and by your father and everything that your life is all about. Like that's what's included in it. And yeah, it's really interesting to see that and know that and like unknowingly like have that happen and have your life roll out before you, and it's very similar to your mother's, and it's really interesting to see that. And yeah, we can see it within our guests today. So Nyawe, for all of your life work and all of your knowledge and your conversations and what you do for the community and our people and things that people don't even know about or see, and everything in between, because all the things that you do matter, and it's really appreciated, even if you don't hear it, or even if you don't see it, see the quick change. Like it's really appreciated, and we're so thankful as a people, as a youth, for all the things and all the work that you do. So Nyawe, and I think if you guys have any last words, you can share them now if you like. No last words?
Well, I guess I can share for anybody that wants to know. My restaurant is Yuego, and it's in the Iroquois Village Plaza in Michigan. It's 1721 Chiswick Road in Michigan. I guess some of the other things, I also have a YouTube channel. It's just under Chef Tawyna Brant. So there's some food knowledge and cooking demo stuff in there. I also have a website. It's just cheftawnybrant.com. And I have social media. So for my restaurant, I don't have a set menu. What we do is we launch on social media every evening. So Instagram, Yuego, and then on Facebook, it's Yuego by Chef Tawyna Brant. And yeah, I guess that's about the only things left I have to share, other than saying Yamangoa Makasa for inviting me. It's an enjoyable evening, and I hope everybody else liked what they've seen today.
I agree. Thank you so much, Makasa, for the invitation. And yes, everybody out there, check out Tawyna. She's an awesome cook, chef. Her food is spectacular. It's wonderful.
And you're taking right, Mom?
Yeah, tomorrow. Apparently there's some yummy things happening. I just want to share one last word. Connection. That's whenever I do a group, whenever I talk about anything, any group that I go to, I always remind people to make a connection with themselves, a connection with each other, their families, their community, their food, the water and the land that we walk on. Reinvest in those connections. That's the biggest fight against colonization that we can put forward. So thank you again for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And you're awesome, by the way. You're very awesome. There's lots of, like Adrianne said, lots of young folks that are, especially girls, that are gonna someday be like Makasa. And that's pretty inspiring.
Thank you. That's so awesome to hear. Well, as you can see, like the panel that we have today, girls and women are pretty awesome, especially Indigenous women. So we all rock. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And thank you for our viewers. If you stayed throughout the whole 2 hours, we're so grateful for your viewership and for everything. And thank you to our guests for sharing everything and all of their knowledge. And I hope everybody took something away, if not a whole bag of some things away from this conversation. And this video will be on Facebook, but it will also be on our YouTube channel called Onondaga Water's Life. So all of our episodes are on there. And right now this is season 3, and we have 2 more episodes in the future. So we're almost done season 3, but yeah, there's a lot of knowledge on there. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and we're gonna end with our closing song, which is by the Bird Singers. I just want to say, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date on our show. Thank you, and here's the bird song by Intertribal. Oh no.